Good morning and welcome to another conversation with Mose. And as always, I pray life is treating you well, exceptionally well, wherever you are in the world, and that you're one day closer to your dreams, hopes, prayers, and aspirations coming true. Today, I'm going to do something a little different. No music, no poetry, just all conversation. And I'm going to be talking about World AIDS Day, which was December the 1st, a couple weeks ago. And I have a special guest on today, George Kerr III, HIV Advocate and activist, resides in D.C., and I'm going to let him introduce himself and whatever he wants to share. All righty. Hey, George, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me. It's a true pleasure to be on with you this crisp Washington morning. Uh, uh, and so I am someone that's been thriving with HIV for 29 years, and I've been active in the fight for over 30 plus years. And so I bring a unique perspective to what I call World HIV Day. And I was very active with my church in changing the language. And I know that it's a controversy out there
Right.
about removing AIDS from there. But to me, AIDS has such a stigma to it, even still today. And so I prefer to say World HIV Day.
Well, let me ask you, first of all, thank you for being a guest. I really appreciate you and your transparency because it's very rare for people to be transparent. And I have to be honest, growing up in Atlanta, becoming a young adult, people weren't openly talking about being HIV positive. And what are your thoughts on now versus then in terms of are people still sharing it, or are they pretty shy about it? What do you think about that?
It's really where you're at in the world. If you work in it like I have, I'm very open. And if you Google my name, it's going to say that I'm HIV positive.
Right.
And so, but if you don't work in the HIV world,
Right.
you may or may not be open about it.
Right.
And so is truly up to you to make that decision.
Right.
And, it's really interesting in 2024, getting ready to go in 2025, we still have HIV criminalizations on the books.
Right.
Where you can get locked up and you can actually go to prison and be registered as a sex offender because of your status.
Well, let me ask you. I don't mean to interrupt, but you mean if you don't share that with your partners?
It's a he said she said type of thing. They just have to say that you didn't tell them, and you can get prosecuted.
Oh wow! Now,
And so I have a really good friend, colleague, who was locked up in Louisiana, um, and now lives in another state and still has to register as a sex offender
wow,
because their partner said that they did not tell them.
wow.
And this is across populations. This is not just one, it's not just gay men, it's across the spectrum. And so, if I was living in a rural America, I don't know if I would be as out
Right. Right.
about it.
Right.
And, I know of a case where a person where they went to the doctor with them about their status.
Right.
It ended up being a nasty breakup, and it ended up getting a charge against the individual.
Well,
And this is men and women also, I should say.
well. Let me ask you. I mean, I really didn't even expect you to say that. I actually, I was aware that it was happening, but I never met anybody that was arrested for it. I never or prosecuted for it. That's kind of interesting. That's definitely I would definitely like to dive into that a little bit more on future podcasts because I'm alarmed because I'm like, what, arrested? But let me ask you, do you think, with that being said, when it comes to HIV positive and negative men, are more HIV positive couples coming together as opposed to dating someone that's not positive, or are they still doing both? Because I haven't met many. Most of the guys that I've met recently were positive together, and they were together. So I mean, I haven't met that many in recent years that were one was positive and one was negative.
I know several people that are in those types of relationships.
Right.
And because of technology, you equals you.
Right.
Undetectable equals untransmittable.
Right.
Meaning, if I'm having sex with my partner and I'm undetectable,
right,
I cannot transmit it. And so we also have medications out there called PrEP, so that you could take a daily pill. My partner, who was negative, they could take a daily pill and they would not be transmitted.
Right.
Now we're so advanced, we have injectable, where you can go to the doctor and get a PrEP shot. I believe it's every 2 months. There's a lot of research saying that it can go up to 6 months.
Right.
So technology around prevention is advancing very rapidly. And so I'm hoping that one day that it can get up to 6 months. And it's just a shot that you get in your hip, and it will prevent you from becoming HIV positive. And this is particularly real important for the LGBTQ community, and that we stop the rate of new transmission rates.
Right.
And this is across all race and gender.
Right. Well, my question is, that you brought that up with the PrEP, is any of that covered by insurance? That's my next question.
Well, as you know, we're getting ready to go through administrative change.
Right. And
right now, it's a controversy. The Biden administration says that it's supposed to be covered, but we found out that there are some insurance that are not covering it. So this is what makes HIV so difficult, because there's just so many different aspects that we have to look at when we're talking about this. And so this is why it's real important. And this is, if you're negative or positive, this is where you have to have a really good relationship with your primary care doctor. And they know you, your sexual life, if you use recreational drugs, anything, bring your whole person to that doctor. And make sure that you have a trust built up with them, so that you're able to have these difficult conversations, and they can help you get to a quality of life that you should be living.
Well, George, I have this, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have to comment. I lived in Atlanta for 32 years, and a lot of the stuff you're saying to me is foreign, and not all of it, but as far as the Black community is concerned, I felt like we weren't having these conversations in detail. I think some people knew certain things, people just weren't sharing it. And even though the HIV rate was high, people knew certain things, they just weren't sharing it. In terms of, like, everything you said about your doctor, you might have a really good doctor, nobody's sharing who their doctor is, or nobody's really wanting to be that transparent about their lifestyle when it comes, because it's a lifestyle. You really have to change your lifestyle. And that's the one trouble I had with Atlanta, that it feels like everybody kind of kept to themselves, and it would have been helpful to know certain things, because I didn't realize there are different strands. That's how, if I'm saying that right, that everybody's not, because I lived in 32 years, and every time I tried to have those conversations, I asked a friend who was HIV positive about PrEP. I just wanted to know about it, if it had side effects, because I know some people have different responses to medication. the level of ignorance that I had living there that long, it just bothered me because nobody wanted to share what you just said, and because it would have been helpful, because you just have all this anxiety and all this paranoia about it. But what do you think people need to do to get comfortable having those open dialogues about, or are they having them and maybe I'm just missing it?
So let me say that, we've had HIV's been around for 40 plus years, and we've had stigma for 40 plus years. And I still know today where I'm having people tell me, well, they heard that you can get it by sharing dinner plates together.
Right.
That saliva can, you can transmit it through saliva. So as it's grown, our technology has grown, and the way that we manage it has grown.
Right.
When I first became HIV, I had a doctor who immediately put me on pills,
right,
and I wasn't ready for pills. And they were putting different types on, because I started with AZT and I went through so many of them. And at one point, early on, I was taking 27 pills a day, like 4 or 5 times a day. And it was a complex type of system, some with food, some without. Some you had to, no dairy, some, affected your sleep. I mean, I remember, and some individuals who have had it for a while remember sativa and the nightmare dreams we would have.
Oh, wow.
That you would just wake up terrified, shaking because of the nightmares you would have. So, at that point, they were managing it.
Right.
Now, today, we have to manage it ourselves.
Right. And
so we're the ones that's going to the doctor and going to the specialist and carrying, okay, this is all the drugs I've been on. This is, this is all my medical history.
Right.
And so the managing it is now upon us.
Right.
And I can tell a quick story. I suffer from allergies really bad.
Right.
And so I went to one specialist at one hospital. He sent me to another specialist at another doctor.
Right.
And they said, okay, we're going to send you to get a CAT scan, and we're going to send you to LabCorp so that you can do this allergy test.
Right.
So I'm now on the injectable. And so I went and got my injectable shot at my doctor. We did lab work. And then I went to another LabCorp for them to draw blood. And my doctor uses LabCorp. I didn't know it was blood work that was being done.
Right.
So I wasted a whole day running around when I could have went to one site and said, hey, this is what's going on.
Right.
And they could have said, oh, we'll draw the blood right here.
Right.
And so it's just these kind of difficult, where my HIV specialist is fantastic. I love her to death.
Right.
Okay. But when you start talking outside of them and these specialties, that's where you really have to manage the system yourself.
Right.
So this long story of answering your question, that it's been complicated. I have some really good friends that live in Atlanta. They are getting some incredible service now. And so from doctors. And so I highly recommend that, if you don't know, talk to someone else that's HIV positive.
Right.
Talk to your provider. Try to gather the information that you need to make a solid decision on what is best for your quality of life.
And I agree with you 100%. But I have to say, and as I shared with you, I lost 2 partners in my 20s and in my late 30s. And in hindsight, it's like my experiences are so different. I mean, I literally lost, and I'm HIV negative. and which is miraculous in itself. So I watched both of them pass away or just kind of wilt away, these great men, and they were both scared to tell me. Actually, neither one of them told me verbatim. I found out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I knew something was the first one. When he died, it was 80. It was 93. So I really wasn't.
Please say his name.
Say his name. Sam.
Say his name.
Sam.
We need to honor his.
Yeah, you're right.
His name.
You're right. Sam. Sam died in 93, and we didn't discuss it at all. He moved away. I was with him all the way up until he moved back home. He had got down to like 90 pounds. And I remember the conversation, and I wrote this in my screenplay, and I'll tell you about that, another conversation. But I remember going to visit him at the hospital, and it was a white nurse. And this is back when they didn't want to touch HIV patients or AIDS patients. They didn't want to touch them. They didn't want to handle them. And it was a white nurse, and she came into his room when I was visiting, and he had on a pamper, and he couldn't, I don't know what he was taking. It might have been AZT. I mean, again, he wouldn't share those things with me. He was like 9 years older, so he felt I was too young to kind of receive those conversations. But anyway, I was going, and I remember this nurse being so nasty to him in front of me. And he had to go to the bathroom, and I guess she was coming to check his vitals or whatever. And I remember, I think I was 22. And I literally let this woman have it. I mean, I was like, you're going to wait till he comes out of the bathroom. And he's standing there with a pamper on trying to get me to calm down, because me being a hothead, I didn't realize I got to leave the hospital and he's got to deal with her. But it was just she was so nasty. And here this guy is, clearly not well. And it was kind of one of those things that I had to he's like, Moses, if you're going to come to the hospital, you can't do that. But again, I didn't realize, even in hindsight, that, they had a right to do that, and people were scared. But I was never afraid of catching anything. I never looked at them any differently. And he had good insurance. He had a really good insurance, and he died a lot slower, and he took a lot of pills. Also, he took a lot of pills, and I think this was early on. He died like literally 93. And later on, Steve, my other partner who died, it was just different. I knew from the first time it was just an interesting experience, but I learned a lot. But the biggest issue I had was, where were the visitors? I mean, people weren't really visiting us. They weren't really, we had a small circle, but Atlanta was just kind of one of those things that, I mean, I hope it's changed over the years. And I didn't mean to get into this long version, but my experiences with HIV have been indirect, but it has affected me, and I have a lot more compassion for the people that were left behind. If in my future, I would love to do something for the caregivers and the people that are survivors of people that have lost partners, because I, to this day, have never met that group where it wasn't a meat market or they're trying to date you. Because I went to my pastor at my church, and I'll never forget it. This was again in Atlanta, and I was going to him because I was struggling with the loss, and I was depressed, and I was going through self-destructive behavior, and my pastor hit on me. And I'm not going to name the church, but it was just like, are you kidding me? And when I tell you my struggles in Atlanta were just, I was asking the right questions, but nobody was answering, and everybody was trying to sleep with me, and I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? And it made me more angry. And now I'm better. I mean, I'm better, and I know everybody's not like that. But again, it put a really bad taste in my mouth. And like you said, it made me more protective of their memory in terms of how they were. And they didn't deserve what they got and how they got treated. But like I said, I don't regret my life with them, but it's been my purpose to like you said, say their names, to remember their memory, and why I feel so strongly about the Black gay experience. Nothing against anybody else, but again, I want to see us again in these spaces, having these conversations, because I'm an older man now, and I like the direction we seem to be going in. People seem to be more accepting of HIV, and in certain spaces now, like you said, it's not as bad as it was. It's not a death sentence anymore, and I'm glad to know someone like you is still on the front lines, helping people. Because again, this is an area I'm not familiar with. I mean, I should know more about it, but my level of ignorance is, like I said, people just didn't want to share with me, and to be honest with you, even with my doctors, it's only been a few doctors the last few years that I've actually shared my sexual life. I think when I got cancer, I was a lot more open about discussing my gay life. But I agree with you 100%. You really do have to share your whole self about your health and not be afraid to be honest. But I have one question for you though. When it comes to HIV being dormant, I don't know if you know. I know you're not a doctor, but what is the real answer? Because I've heard different stories about it could lay dormant for years and just show up. So what is
I'm not a doctor, and so I can't do the science behind it.
Right.
I know that I know a really good friend of mine who went several years before he even started taking HIV medication because he had none of the side effects. He didn't have a high viral load or any of that. Mm-hmm. So technology's changed quite a bit, and so and I just was part of a community town hall a couple of weeks ago where we talked about the cure research.
Right.
And so that, I think, plays into it. That goes directly into that.
Right.
And when we say HIV cure, what do we mean? And we do not have a common definition. We're looking at different aspects of what that means. But I did hear from two individuals, that got blood transfusion, and they are now cured.
Oh, wow.
What they're definitionally called cure.
Right.
So the miracle of science, and we really have to trust our community, our research community. Right. I'm heavily involved with it on the local level and on the national level. Right. And we owe a lot to our HIV researchers and the work that they're doing to add to our quality of life.
Right. That's awesome. Well, I just wanted to ask you, getting back to your position at the church and the World AIDS Day, what do you see? What do you want to see more in the future, and what do you want to be doing in the upcoming years?
Well, like I said, we're in a really unique position right now, where we're at with HIV and with the new administration coming in, and not knowing what's going to happen to HIV research. But I had the unique privilege of recognizing the 37th World HIV Day with President Biden and First Lady Dr. Biden.
Oh, wow.
And Ryan White's mother. We also had a young person, Daniel, and he did an amazing job. We were on the South Lawn where we saw a portion of the quilt. And if anyone knows the history of the quilt, it's been in D.C. On full display 3 times.
Oh, wow.
It will never be on full view again because it is too large. And to see the quilt and the meaning behind it,
right,
and the understanding that each panel represents a human being who was amazing.
Right.
And I say amazing because their family and friends took the time after they had transitioned, right, and put a panel representing them. The quilt is now housed in San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
So if you ever travel and you go to San Francisco, it is a must-be place. Before I went to San Francisco, it was in Atlanta, Georgia.
Right.
And I went to the warehouse and saw these thousands and thousands of quilts just stacked up, and how they had it organized, where you could find a name, it will have a panel number, and then they can go and find that panel very easily, like a library book, to see it. And it was one of the most meaningful times that I had. Back in 1996, it was on the mall, on the Ellipse, and I went to see that. And I remember I was much younger and didn't have the impact that it would have today.
Right.
But it still stuck with me, and how we honored those individuals.
Well, let me ask you, how do people get their names on the blanket? I've never asked that question.
You put a panel together and you submit it. So for example, you could do one for your partner, Sam, and you could go to the website and they will give you the dimensions and give you instructions on how to do it. When it's finished, how to ship it to them, and the whole process.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, George, I have to say, I mean, forgive me for my ignorance. I knew about the blanket. To be honest with you, I saw it. I don't know if it was the original blanket, but I saw it in that show, Fellow Travelers. Not to give spoiler alert for anybody that's listening. They showed it at the end of the movie, and it was they had added somebody to the blanket, but I didn't. It was on the ground, and they were walking around it. At least I'm assuming it was, or something similar to the blanket. I'm not sure, but I was always wondering
The quilt.
Yeah, the quilt. How do people get their name on it? But yeah, you answered that question. I appreciate you saying that, because I really didn't even. I was aware of it, but I wasn't sure how that happened. That's awesome. So you said the administration, you don't think they're gonna do that again?
Well, no, they definitely will not be bringing the quilt back to DC. I don't know what they're going to do with research. Right. I don't know what they're going to do with our Affordable Care Act, right, for individuals living with Medicaid, Medicare. I'm just, and this is me personally talking. I'm very concerned about what the next administrator, his picks for his cabinet members.
Right.
They're scary to me. And so we're in a time right now where we're having to wait to see. Right. But I have a feeling that in 2025, we're going to have to be activated. We're going to have our voices heard.
Right.
And however we can do that, we need to do that.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I really, really do. And I wanted to say too, if you're okay with it, I would like to do another part, a series of conversations about HIV and the effects, and going into the new administration and where you think we are, and other parts of the conversation I think we can cover. And because, like I said, you can only share so much in 30 minutes. But I want to say, George, go ahead.
Let me just real quickly, because you talked about role models.
Okay.
And yesterday I had the privilege of attending a friend, colleague, hero, activist, advocate for HIV, LGBTQ, substance use disorder, and I want to lift up Cornelius Baker, who was an amazing individual. He pulled no punches. He let you know when you were wrong. He challenged you. And So we were at the National Cathedral. So that tells you how big a person this individual is, because he worked locally, domestically, and internationally. And so we were left to a challenge to keep the fight going, and that we need to be fighting for those, as I call it, those individuals that are on the street corner, that are living with HIV,
Right.
or unhoused, and we need to make sure their voices are heard and get them the services that they need.
Right.
And that's going to take all of us as a community, the business community, the federal government, the local government, politicians, all of us coming together. There is a falseness over there that HIV is over. HIV is not over.
Right.
You can still get the virus. You can still die from the virus. You know, there's a lot that goes into healthcare for those with HIV and aging. And the mental health, the aches and pains, the kidney functions, the heart issues is a complex. So we as a community need to keep talking about HIV, and not just the individuals that work in it.
Right.
But we've got to get this conversation out to the wider community, the Lyft drivers, the barbershops, anywhere where you have people talking, and let them know, because we cannot make this a shameful. We've got to hit this and keep hitting it, because I truly want to see in my lifetime a cure for HIV. But more important, I want to see a better quality of life for individuals living with HIV, and individuals that are negative to stay negative and to be healthy.
I appreciate you saying that. And I agree 100%. I mean, 100,000%, because I feel like it's a journey, like you said. And I believe if we take away the stigma of the fear of the conversation, then more people will have it, especially in the Black community, in terms of, because it is being gay and Black. It's a whole nother conversation. That's why I know there are going to be a lot of branches to this conversation, because I do want to talk about mental health. Maybe the next time, part 2, we'll focus on mental health from all sides, and substance abuse, which I call self-destructive behavior.
Substance use disorder. We do not use the term substance abuse, because that's very stigmatizing.
Okay.
And so I just want your audience to know that we need to be using, we need to have language justice.
No, when say that again? I apologize. Say that again.
Substance use disorder.
Okay, substance use disorder. I stand corrected, and I apologize for that. And
No. This is all about education.
Oh, for sure, no doubt about it.
So this is a safe space.
Oh, no doubt about it. No
that's why I, ordinarily in different situations, you got to judge where you're at.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
And
I agree.
This we're doing as an educational piece.
Yes.
So I need to bring it 100% on education.
Oh, for sure. And I have to admit, I've learned a lot during this time. Again, I wish I had known someone like you in my 20s and 30s. And I, to be honest with you, I like sharing that information. So if I hear someone else say it, then I can say the same thing. I can correct them with it, because to be honest with you, I want to talk about that in the next conversation, because I have a lot of experiences with people who have experiences with people with those challenges. And I definitely want, and then eventually I would like to have a live stream where we can take calls from people and maybe help people other ways. Because I think you could add some perspective, and I could too. So, and I'm working on the live stream, so I hope you're on board with us maybe taking calls from people in the future. But
yes,
we'll have to graduate. I'll have to get, like I said, I'll do my research on that part to see. But I definitely, it's something, a goal of mine I would like to accomplish in 2025, to actually have, like you said, widen my audience and widen the conversation. But I want to say, George,
Well,
go ahead.
we just need to speak it.
Oh, for sure. No doubt about it.
Speak it into reality.
Oh, for no
It's
doubt about it.
not, I hope it's okay, we're going to.
Yeah, you're right. We're going to. We're going to have that conversation. And that being said, George, I want to say thank you for joining me this morning, taking time out of your day to have this conversation with me and my listeners, and sharing your wisdom and knowledge and information and allowing me to share mine. And again, I learned a lot as well. I mean, I hope that my listeners have learned something. And maybe, again, they're not as ignorant to certain things. They're a little bit more wiser from this conversation. But I want to say, enjoy the rest of your day. We will be talking again. And as always, I pray life is treating you well wherever you are in the world, and that you're one day closer to your dreams, hopes, prayers, and aspirations coming true. Thank you for listening.